Hi, this is Tim Ackesy from Atlanta, Georgia, and this podcast is dedicated to examining how purpose and intention are involved in stuttering. What I mean is our purpose to hide the stutter, to conceal it? If that's our purpose and intention, it'll probably backfire. How do people develop such fears of stuttering, such shame? Why is it so important to conceal it? What if people found out? What do we think they'll think? What is the meaning that we attach to stuttering? The word meaning comes from German, what we hold in mind. So I hold in mind the meaning that I have attached to my stuttering. Even if I was teased and bullied, ultimately, I've attached a meaning to my stuttering. Let's pretend I go into an interview. If the meaning I attach to stuttering is that it cannot happen, it cannot come out, it cannot be heard, they can't find out I stutter, that's what I'm holding in mind. I will feel anxiety, nervousness. I might change my words or avoid because of what's swirling in my head. If my purpose and intention is to conceal my stutter, it can affect my choices all day, all week, all month, my whole life perhaps. I'm changing words, pointing to menus, not introducing people when it's appropriate to do so. I'm letting it affect my choices. I may have bigger symptoms of stuttering. Let's pretend I've always feared words beginning with P. Someone asks me where I need to go for business this week, and the answer is Pennsylvania. I fear P. I take a deep breath, I close my eyes, and I Pennsylvania. I push that word out. My attempt to not stutter, I jumped into the word and created a bigger stutter. Let's look back to some authors and papers. 2003, Starkweather and Givens wrote a brilliant paper for ISAD online conference. They discussed stuttering as a variant of post-traumatic stress disorder. In doing so, they talked about how people can remember an event of stuttering if there's emotion attached to it. Emotions like shame, embarrassment. We can begin to predict moments of stuttering in the future, and we may experience dissociation. Here's an example. I'm 16 years old, and I'm driving. I have some friends in the car, and one of them says, "Hey man, I'm starving. Please pull in that drive-thru." So now I get to order for everybody. Great. I stutter. I'm worried what they'll think about me. Will they'll tell other people at school? Will it become a texting topic, my stuttering? That moment of stuttering can lead to me fearing drive-thrus as an adult. Maybe now I park my car and walk in and say, number one. What's dissociation? A great example of dissociation is the first day of a class, first day of a meeting, when the person in front of the room says, let's go around the room, introduce ourselves, and say three things about us. If you stutter, this is a freak-out moment for many. We panic. Our unconscious mind goes back on our timeline and accesses memories that are similar. We begin to run a movie. If I stutter, people will find out. They might not like me, might think I'm awkward. And then I'm dissociated. So as it's moving through the room approaching me, I have a panic. My body's in the chair, but my mind is running this movie about stuttering. That's called dissociation. Dissociation also explains why people can't use their techniques and targets when they desperately need them the most. I once helped a man who was in sales. He had been to a program in Virginia 3 times, plus what they call refreshers. He learned something called targets. Deep breaths, easy onsets, amplitude, contour, all these different things. But when he would make a cold call or sit down in a meeting, all the techniques and targets would crumble because of his anxiety about stuttering. He was so intent to not stutter, to conceal it, that he would spiral down into blocking, avoidance, and word changing. I can personally speak on that. I came out of graduate school. I had a degree in speech language pathology. I took all the classes in speech anatomy, all the coursework, get a master's degree. When I came out, the first 12 months, I created a regression back into stuttering I hadn't seen since high school. How I did it in summary was I had a belief that now that I'm a professional, I can't stutter anymore. I have to be perfect. And as I went around the hospital where I worked, wearing a white lab coat with my name tag, I was positive that if anyone heard me stutter, then they looked at my name tag, they would say, a speech pathologist who stutters? They'll hire anybody. This place is a joke. That's what I believed. So it created anxiety for me, and I relapsed into old stuttering. It took me about a year to get out of it. In 2014, the American Psychological Association changed the DSM-4 to the DSM-5. As they did that, they changed the word stuttering to childhood onset fluency disorder. But meanwhile, they added anxiety and avoidance as diagnostic criteria. Gerald McGuire was quoted as saying, "For many people, this is what can disable them." He meant anxiety and avoidance. McGuire went on to be quoted, "They may have a high level of anxiety, and they avoid certain speaking situations or certain words, and they focus so much of the time around the avoidance and the anxiety, it's really a key focus." Dr. McGuire is also known for medical studies trying medicines for people who stutter. Some of those medicines are targeting anxiety. Work in 2017 by McAllister reminded us that stuttering is strongly associated with social anxiety disorder, a persistent and excessive fear of being humiliated, scrutinized, or negatively evaluated in social situations, which may compromise many aspects of life, including relationships, education, and employment. Up to 60% of adults, she said, who are seeking treatment for stuttering experience social anxiety disorder, compared to only 6.8% of the general adult population. That's profound. We want to avoid getting caught up in this discussion. People will say anxiety doesn't cause stuttering. We have to expand that people who stutter develop anxiety related to their stuttering. I was just speaking with a third grader who got called on to read. She began to stutter. A child mocked her stutter for all to hear. She was humiliated. She went home crying. And that's a child who would be at risk for avoiding, trying to get out of talking, and developing anxiety related to the stutter. If you look in Reddit, which has more than 7,000 members, the page for stuttering specifically, the discussion is about how stuttering affects people. They're having trouble finding employment, relationships, and so forth. And very few posts have to do with, how do I start a word beginning with T? It's more anxiousness, anxiety related to their stuttering. How do people develop specific word fears? How does Mark, at age 45, still struggle with his name? There's something called the 3 Ps. We punctuate, we personalize, it becomes pervasive. Maybe Mark started stuttering on his name in elementary school. Maybe somebody said, "What's the matter? You can't say your name," or "Did you forget your name?" He starts to have anxiety, starts fearing his name. So he's punctuated it, he's personalized it, it becomes pervasive. Maybe other words that begin with M are now difficult, and it began with his name. Hear about that all the time. Know that your attention follows your intention. If your intention is to conceal stuttering, hide stuttering, not let people find out you stutter, then your attention will be on the tricks, the gimmicks, the crutches designed to hide your stutter. Right now, I want you to take a sheet of paper and across the top of the page, about 1 inch from the top, make a line from left to right. Find the middle of that line and go straight down. Now you've formed a large T on your paper. In the upper left-hand corner, put a minus sign. In the upper right-hand corner, put a plus sign. What we're going to do for yourself, or if you help people who stutter, maybe this is about your client, we're going to make a list of things designed to conceal the stutter. Maybe you'll find avoidance, word changing, asking others to talk for you, make a phone call for you, putting in fillers. Fillers are when maybe I say, can you? A string of unnecessary sounds or words when they're designed to not stutter. We know what thinking ums are. I want pepperoni, black olives, and peppers. Are you texting when the call is most appropriate? Do you point to a menu or order what you think you can say that day? Do you avoid doing an introduction because you're afraid to stutter on the person's name or your own? I just talked to a guy who's engaged, and he is avoiding saying his fiance's name when he's meeting new people. He had to explain to her it was about the stuttering, yet it's something he wants to work on. Do you take calls in privacy? Maybe you're in a booth at a restaurant, your phone rings, and you jump up to take it in privacy so others won't hear you stutter. Do you do what's called eye aversion? Eye aversion is a unique and important symptom. Eye aversion is when I look away right in the moment of my stutter. What drives eye aversion is when I project my thoughts. I don't want to know your facial expressions during my stutter. Do you now know I stutter? So as I look away, I'm dissociated. I'm thinking about you and your reaction to my stutter. I will have a longer stutter on a stopwatch because I'm dissociated. And unfortunately, I reload all of my malware thoughts, my projecting, my beliefs about stuttering. So eye aversion is cognitive and physical. I'm going to have a longer stutter, a more profound stutter as I look away. It's more noticeable. Most people think that eye aversion protects them, but it's the opposite. So you look at your list, starting with avoidance habits all the way down to eye aversion. When you look at those, ask yourself, how many of those are choices? Choices we make. No one forces us to do them. You realize they're all choices. And when you realize they're all choices, what do you believe about changing? As you dismantle that, you find an opposite for each of those habits. You can free yourself. All that stuff, all those crutches and tricks fall under when the attempted solution becomes the problem. So let's take eye aversion. Draw an arrow from left to right to the plus sign. Do what I call L squared. Look and let it out. Look at the person and let the word out, even if there's a stutter. It's better to be associated, courageous, and look at the person as you let the word out. Now let's move to disclosure. Because so much of purpose and intention, when it's designed to conceal the stutter, we would never disclose. We'd never tell people we stutter. Can we do that? Yes, we can. There's more work being done on disclosure. 2016, work by Boyle. 2018, work by McGill. 2019 by Gerlach. Talking about the benefits and value of disclosure to liberate the person who stutters. Go ahead and tell people you stutter. In any interview, if I'm coaching someone to do an interview, I encourage them, tell the interviewer that you sometimes stutter. If you're in Toastmasters or speech therapy, it's up to you whether you share that. That's your own choice. Disclosure will bring you more comfort and reduce how much you project on your listener. So in 2019, there was a paper by Gerlach talking about concealable stigmatized identity, looking at it with 4 criteria. One criteria is centrality, the extent a person defines himself by his CSI. Concealment, the extent that a person attempts to keep their CSI a secret. Salience is the frequency of CSI thoughts. And last but not least is disclosure, the extent a person verbally reveals their CSI to others. So stuttering can fall under a concealable, stigmatized identity. When we walk up to somebody, they may have no idea we stutter. And oftentimes we're trying to hide it. Ironically, in 2011, I did something for the ISAT online conference with an acronym CSI. In my case, it was Communication Scene Investigation, explaining to people who stutter how to investigate what are their thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and choices that contribute to difficulty. So let's pretend they're in classrooms and they find themselves not wanting to raise their hand, not wanting to participate. How to do some CSI and investigate what they're thinking or feeling. And one way to do it is to close their eyes and focus on that classroom and ask themselves, what do they believe about stuttering? What would it mean to them to stutter? That can help them find their thoughts and feelings. If we spend our day, our week, our life trying to disguise we stutter, hide it, we can never find ecology. Remember that. So what is the field of speech pathology doing about helping people reduce their anxiety, fear, and avoidance? How do we change purpose and intention? Well, I'll tell you, cognitive behavioral therapy is taught at few schools, but it's vital. Did we learn from Dr. McGuire that it's anxiety and avoidance can disable people who stutter? The field of speech pathology seems to float between models of CBT. There's been work on REBT, mindfulness, solution-focused brief therapy. After spending $20,000 postgraduate experimenting on myself and seeing results in therapy, it's become clear to me that neuro-linguistic programming and neurosemantics are the broadest and most potent of the CBT. Some say that solution-focused brief therapy is evidence-based, but NLP is not. I've heard that 1,000 times. Those individuals want to investigate to find out that the founder of solution-focused brief therapy, Steve DeShazer, his background is in NLP. So solution-focused brief therapy is a spin-off of NLP. My next podcast will be looking deeper dive into CBT, mindfulness, and how to help people to do their own CSI and discover what's holding them back. If you're out there and you stutter, start changing your purpose and intention. Be courageous, speak up, be proud, and I wish you the very best.